I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum. They Live, 1988, wasn't just a low-budget sci-fi flick. It was a brutal, satirical punch to the face of consumer culture, corporate greed, and government control. John Carpenter didn't just make a movie. He fired a shot across the bow of an entire system. Behind the sunglasses, chaos erupted. Actors clashed, stunts turned dangerous, and studios grew nervous about Carpenter's unapologetic message. What audiences saw was a cult classic. What happened behind the cameras was even wilder. Today, we're peeling back the layers with 20 weird facts about They Live. Stories of late-night rewrites, wrestlers turned actors, real-world paranoia, and a 6-minute fight scene that nearly destroyed the cast. And wait until you hear the bonus fact. One secret so strange, it still sparks debate today. Buckle up, because the truth is out there. Let's dive in. Roddy Piper wasn't Carpenter's first choice. John Carpenter originally wanted a traditional Hollywood actor to lead They Live, but he was tired of polished stars and studio interference. Instead, he took a gamble on wrestler Rowdy Roddy Piper. The choice shocked everyone. Piper wasn't an actor. He was a wrestling icon known for wild promos and in-ring chaos. Carpenter, however, believed that only someone outside the Hollywood system could embody a drifter who sees through society's lies. The move broke rules, but it gave the film its raw edge. Piper's rugged charisma and outsider status weren't a flaw. They were the secret weapon. Casting him was controversial at the time, but it cemented the movie's authenticity. It wasn't polished acting, it was raw humanity, and audiences felt it. Piper himself later admitted, "I wasn't acting, I was living it." The infamous fight scene almost broke the actors. The 6-minute alleyway fight between Piper and Keith David is now legendary. But it wasn't stuntmen, it was real. Carpenter instructed them to make the fight as raw as possible, only pulling punches to the face. Everything else, body slams, suplexes, gut shots, was bone-crunchingly real. Piper and David spent weeks choreographing, but once cameras rolled, adrenaline took over. They smashed each other into concrete, slipped on gravel, and left the set bruised for weeks. Carpenter later said the fight wasn't just action, it symbolized the resistance to truth. Ironically, it became so exhausting that they had to shoot it in segments, with long breaks to recover. Not polished choreography, but brutal endurance. Fans still debate, was it a fight scene, or an actual street brawl caught on film? Carpenter hid his name under a pseudonym. Though he directed and scored They Live, Carpenter credited the screenplay to Frank Armitage. Why? Hollywood politics. Carpenter wanted freedom to attack Reagan-era America without studio meddling, by hiding behind the pseudonym Borrowed. From a character in H.P. Lovecraft's mythology, he could criticize capitalism without Universal executives panicking. The alias gave him creative cover, but it also fed into the movie's themes: hidden truths, double identities, secret controllers of reality. Years later, Carpenter admitted the pseudonym wasn't just protection, it was a statement. Not even he wanted to fully claim authorship in a world where speaking truth could end a career. Ironically, the alias became as much a part of the film's mystique as the sunglasses. It wasn't just fiction, it was camouflage. Piper's sunglasses became a symbol of protest. The iconic sunglasses weren't just a prop, they became a symbol. In the film, they exposed subliminal messages and alien overlords. Off-screen, they were adopted by activists, anarchists, and even Occupy Wall Street protesters decades later. Carpenter revealed the glasses were modeled after 1950s Ray-Bans, chosen for their simple, working-class look. But their meaning spread far beyond cinema. In the 2000s, they were used in political art, graffiti, and even hacker culture to represent awakening against control. Piper once joked, "I put on those glasses, and people still think I can see the truth." What started as a $10 costume accessory became an enduring symbol of rebellion, proof that a low-budget prop can ignite movements far outside Hollywood. The studio tried to kill the message. Universal Pictures wanted They Live marketed as a fun B-movie with aliens, not as a scathing critique of Reaganomics. They buried Carpenter's political angle in trailers, emphasizing action over satire. The studio feared backlash from advertisers, since the film literally attacks consumerism and corporations. Carpenter fought back, giving interviews where he flat-out declared, The film's about yuppies and unrestrained capitalism. That's what it's really about. The clash left Universal nervous, and the film underperformed at the box office. Audiences didn't know what they were walking into. Yet this clash between studio and director gave They Live its underground legacy. It wasn't a blockbuster. It was a grenade smuggled into theaters, disguised as entertainment. The truth was too dangerous for the marketing department to handle. Piper refused to let Hollywood own him. Roddy Piper wasn't just a hired hand. He was a man guarding his independence. Hollywood tried to sign him to multi-picture deals after They Live, but Piper refused. He didn't want to be owned by a studio, fearing the same kind of control he was fighting on screen. Piper later revealed that Vince McMahon, WWF's powerful owner, was furious he took the role without approval. McMahon allegedly wanted to own Piper's film career too, but Piper stood firm. This tension mirrored the film's central theme: individuals resisting powerful systems that demand obedience. Piper walked away from Hollywood offers and even risked his wrestling career rather than compromise. It wasn't just rebellion on screen, it was rebellion in life. His stance gave the movie an authenticity no contract-driven star could have delivered. Carpenter's music was a secret weapon. The pulsing, bluesy soundtrack of They Live was John Carpenter at his finest. Working with collaborator Alan Howarth, Carpenter composed a minimalist score built around a slow, hypnotic bass line. It wasn't orchestral grandeur, it was paranoia made audible. Carpenter described it as urban western music, meant to echo a lone drifter wandering into a corrupted town. The soundtrack, created on a budget of mere thousands, became one of Carpenter's most influential. Years later, its sound inspired everything from indie rock bands to electronic artists. It wasn't just background music, it was mood, tension, and rebellion distilled into rhythm. Audiences may not hum the theme like Star Wars, but they feel it in their bones. A steady, relentless reminder that something sinister lurks beneath the everyday. Piper's emotions bled into the role. Behind the bravado, Piper was fighting demons. During filming, he was dealing with injuries, exhaustion, and estrangement from wrestling's inner circle. Carpenter saw that raw pain and encouraged him to channel it. Piper's performance as Nada, a man beaten down by life, searching for meaning, wasn't method acting. It was lived experience. He later confessed that he was lonely during the shoot, and that ache leaked onto the screen. When he puts on the sunglasses and mutters, "I got news for you. You're mine now." It isn't camp. It's fury sharpened by reality. Audiences didn't just see a character, they saw a man fighting for his soul. That vulnerability, hidden inside the action, is what turned a wrestler into an unlikely cinematic icon. The aliens were designed to be familiar. The grotesque alien faces in They Live weren't imagined as monsters. Carpenter wanted them to resemble distorted humans, smiling salesmen, slick politicians, glamorous models. The design team crafted latex masks that looked like skulls wrapped in glossy synthetic skin, exaggerating the features of the wealthy elite. Carpenter explained, "They had to look like people we already know." The aliens were never meant to be alien at all. They were the ruling class, exposed. The low-budget makeup, ironically, made them scarier. Their cheap, uncanny look blurred fiction and reality. Audiences laughed at first, but unease lingered. Who among us hides such a face beneath their charm? By rejecting a sci-fi monster look, Carpenter forced viewers to confront the horror of power itself. The film's release date was political. They Live premiered on November 4, 1988, just 4 days before the U.S. presidential election. Carpenter swore it wasn't planned, but the timing was explosive. The film openly criticized Reagan-era consumerism, greed, and the rise of corporate power. Released during campaign season, many saw it as a direct political statement. Some theaters even reported debates breaking out in lobbies after screenings, with audiences arguing whether the film was truth or trash. Carpenter later admitted he wanted people to walk out angry at the system, not just entertained. Not coincidentally, the movie dropped right as Bush Sr. was about to continue Reagan's legacy. It wasn't just a film, it was a cinematic protest. The sunglasses weren't just props, they were ballots of rebellion. Keith David was Carpenter's secret weapon. John Carpenter knew he needed more than just Roddy Piper's charisma. He needed a real actor who could ground the film's wild premise. Enter Keith David, fresh from The Thing. David's presence gave They Live dramatic weight. He wasn't just a sidekick, he was the conscience of the story. Carpenter once said, Keith could make any line sound like Shakespeare. That gravitas turned the film's famous fight scene into something more than spectacle. It became a battle of philosophies. David resisted at first, worried the project was too pulpy, but Carpenter convinced him the subtext mattered. On screen, his skepticism anchors the chaos, making the audience question what's real. Without David, They Live might have been pure camp. With him, it became satire with teeth. The bubblegum line was almost cut. I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum. That line wasn't written by Carpenter. It came from Roddy Piper's personal notebook of wrestling promos. Piper offered it on set, and Carpenter loved it. But Universal executives hated it. They thought it was too goofy and wanted it removed. Carpenter ignored them. He trusted Piper's instinct that it would land. On release, critics dismissed it as silly, but audiences latched onto it instantly. It became one of the most quoted lines in the 1980s cinema, inspiring memes, t-shirts, and countless parodies. Ironically, the line the studio wanted to bury outlived the movie's initial box office run. Sometimes rebellion lives in just one unscripted sentence. A $3 million budget made magic. Carpenter made They Live on a shoestring budget of around $3 million, a fraction of what Blockbuster spent. The result? Every dollar had to stretch. Sets were recycled, props were repurposed, and Carpenter shot on location in Los Angeles without expensive permits. The city itself became a character: grimy alleys, abandoned lots, and cheap hotels. The alien broadcast signal was created with simple video effects layered over stock footage. Instead of being a weakness, the low budget gave the film authenticity. Audiences could feel the grit of the real streets, the claustrophobia of cheap rooms, and the menace lurking in everyday billboards. It wasn't glossy Hollywood. It was guerrilla filmmaking with a message, and that roughness made it timeless. Piper took real risks in the stunt work. Unlike many stars, Piper insisted on doing his own stunts. Wrestling had trained him to take falls, but They Live pushed him further. He leapt off rooftops, crashed through fake windows, and absorbed brutal hits during fight scenes. One particularly dangerous stunt involved falling backward onto concrete with only a thin mat hidden from the camera. Piper later admitted he saw stars after that take, but refused to quit. Carpenter encouraged his toughness, but worried Piper would injure himself beyond recovery. The danger was real. Wrestling had already left Piper with permanent injuries, and every stunt added to the toll. Yet his willingness to risk his body gave the film an undeniable authenticity. When Nada fights for survival, it isn't acting. It's Piper's reality. Critics didn't understand. At first, upon release, They Live baffled critics. Many dismissed it as campy, clumsy, or too obvious. Roger Ebert gave it 2.5 stars, calling it an unconvincing science fiction parable. What they didn't see was the satire. Carpenter wasn't hiding his message. It was loud, raw, and unapologetic. Critics who expected sleek sci-fi missed the grit on purpose. Carpenter didn't want polish. He wanted anger. Over time, though, the movie's reputation grew. By the 1990s, academics analyzed it as a sharp critique of late capitalism. By the 2000s, protest movements had adopted its imagery. The film that critics shrugged off became a cultural weapon. Not misunderstood forever, just misunderstood too soon. Billboards were real messages. One of the most haunting images in They Live is the reveal of subliminal billboards reading "Obey, Consume, and Marry and Reproduce." These weren't created on massive studio backlots. Carpenter used real Los Angeles billboards and covered them with stark black and white replacements. The simplicity made them chilling. When passersby stumbled across the set, some assumed they were actual propaganda signs. The unsettling look wasn't achieved with CGI. It was practical effects, paint, and paste. This guerrilla tactic not only saved money but also made the message inescapably real. Audiences watching the film knew those were the same streets they walked. It wasn't glossy futurism. It was their world, stripped bare. The terrifying thought lingered. What if the signs were always there, and we just couldn't see them? Carpenter aimed at Reagan, directly. Though Carpenter later insisted the film was about all power systems, the timing made it impossible to miss the critique of Ronald Reagan's America. The 1980s had seen deregulation, Wall Street excess, and widening wealth gaps. They Live skewered this culture by portraying aliens as suited elites living off the working class. Carpenter later said, "The Reagan Revolution was run by aliens." It was satire with no subtlety, a middle finger to the decade's obsession with greed. This was why Universal downplayed the politics in marketing, but audiences caught the subtext. For some, it was catharsis. For others, it was too blunt. The film's bravery wasn't in its effects or fights. It was in calling out the powerful by name during their reign. Nada wasn't supposed to have a name. Roddy Piper's character is called Nada, meaning nothing in Spanish. But in the actual film, his name is never spoken. Carpenter deliberately left him unnamed to make him an everyman, someone anyone could project themselves onto. The name only appears in the script and credits. Critics argued this choice made him more myth than man, a drifter with no past, representing all workers exploited by the system. Piper loved it, saying it gave him freedom to play a guy with no baggage. The namelessness added to the film's dreamlike feel. Was Nada a man, or was he a symbol of rebellion itself? Carpenter left it ambiguous, letting audiences wrestle with the idea that even nothing could spark revolution. The ending sparked outrage. Unlike many 1980s sci-fi films, They Live doesn't end with triumph. Instead, Nada sacrifices himself to destroy the alien transmitter, exposing their existence but dying in the process. The final shot, an alien exposed mid-coitus, was Carpenter's final jab of satire. Some audiences laughed, others were furious, feeling cheated by the bleakness. Studio executives hated it, wanting a hero survives ending. Carpenter refused, saying, "In real revolutions, people die. Heroes don't walk away clean." The downbeat finale solidified the film's cult status. It wasn't Hollywood wish fulfillment, it was bitter truth wrapped in sci-fi. The outrage only made the ending more powerful, forcing viewers to confront sacrifice instead of spectacle. The film's legacy outgrew its box office. They Live earned just over $13 million at the box office, modest even by 1980s standards. For years, it was dismissed as another Carpenter B-movie, but as decades passed, its imagery, aliens, sunglasses, obey, became cultural touchstones. From Shepard Fairey's street art to political protests, the film's DNA spread everywhere. What Hollywood saw as a failure became a handbook for resistance. Carpenter admitted he never expected this afterlife. It was supposed to be a cheap movie. Somehow, it turned into a statement. Its modest success became irrelevant compared to its long shadow. Sometimes the films that bomb in theaters live longest in culture. Not blockbusters, but underground rebellions that refuse to die. Piper found evidence of surveillance. Roddy Piper later claimed that during the making of They Live, he discovered he was being watched. He alleged his phone was tapped and strange cars followed him, possibly due to his involvement with anti-establishment figures in Los Angeles. While never confirmed, Piper insisted the film got too close to the truth. Whether paranoia or reality, his claim only deepened the movie's mystique. Fans argue it's fitting. The man who wore the glasses on screen felt he was living them off screen. It wasn't just a movie about surveillance. It may have invited surveillance. The line between fiction and reality blurred, leaving Piper haunted long after cameras stopped rolling. They Live began as a scrappy, low-budget sci-fi, but it became a cultural manifesto. It wasn't polished Hollywood. It was rebellion pressed onto celluloid. What audiences thought was campy action became prophecy, speaking louder with each passing decade. So, the next time you put on sunglasses, remember, maybe the world isn't what it seems. Subscribe and drop your thoughts below, because in a world full of noise, your voice might just be the resistance.